Edwina Perkins, how are you?
I'm well, and how are you?
I'm good, thank you. So how's your day so far? Thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. So far so good. Woke up with a little frost outside, um, but it's otherwise sunny and beautiful here. So I'm doing great.
That's good. That's good. As I said, before we could come on, I love your smile and I appreciate it when the guests come on with a smile because that's how we know it's going to be an awesome convo on the show. So thank you for that. And where are you coming to us from?
I'm coming from North Carolina, small town.
North
Well, it's
Carolina.
Perry, North Carolina. Yes.
Okay. And have you stayed there your whole life?
No, actually, I grew up in North Carolina for the first 22 years. And then I got married and moved away to, of all places, California, and then ended up there for a couple of years, then Florida for 30 years. And what brought us back to North Carolina? Two grandchildren. I said to my husband, it's time to move. But coming back, it felt like I came home. I guess it's that, once you grow up somewhere and you revisit, there's something in you that still says you're connected to that area. So, yes,
Yeah, I
I've been
understand
here
what.
5 years.
Okay. It's a trend, you know. It's always the grandchildren.
Oh, yes.
I see it happening a lot.
Yes. And it used to be, where the kids moved to to the grandparents so that they could have their children grow up around grandparents. Now it's the grandparents moving to the kids. So that's what we did.
Yeah, yeah. My my parents did the same thing as well in 2014. Yeah, it was 2014. So in South Africa, I'm in Johannesburg, which is like the capital of South Africa. And then down at the coast is Durban. So I was born in Durban, and then we relocated here when I was still in the seventh grade. So Johannesburg is home for me. Like even though I was born in Durban, but each time I go there, I don't really have that same feeling you do where it's like it's home because I spent so much of my life in Johannesburg. I schooled here, went to college here, started my career here, started podcasting here.
Yes. Well, that's different because I grew up here. I have a twin brother who lives here. And so I guess that's why I could connect coming back. Now, if I'd been in your shoes, I would have been like, nope. But
Yeah, yeah. No, then yeah, as I was saying, then 2014 I got two older siblings and they have children. So my parents also decided to be closer to their grandchildren. So that's why I say it's a trend. It's a trend.
it is. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. So we now once again welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here. You are, from what I have gathered, you are an icon when it comes to Christian fiction and that arena, that community. You hold so many different titles. You belong to so many different organizations. You're an editor, you're a mentor, you're a coach. Yeah, so as I was saying, I can relate because, myself being in the music industry and now branching into the book industry, I never just come into the industry as a DJ, as a music producer, but I also wanted to be involved on the business end of stuff. So I can relate, you being a writer and also being involved with the business and stuff, which is not always easy, it's not for everyone. You know, authors at times they just want to write, then they want Edwina, you do the rest. We don't want to get involved, so I can relate. And I'm proud that you actually do that because it's ambitious at times, but it's good to know what's happening, on both ends, So you're a coach. So, when a writer comes to you, you don't want them to get ripped off by a publisher or publicist, whoever it may be. So it's always good to have, that knowledge. So you got like a whole lot of experience to share with us. So you could start at any point in your life. Let's get to know you.
Okay.
Okay, it's done it again. But anyway, uh, yeah, uh, you've spoken to us already. You told us, about your upbringing, where you grew up, where you relocated. So let's, jump now onto when did first point in your journey, where did it all start for you? When did writing start for you? Was it something that came along later in life where you found, okay, this is my calling, this is what I want to do, or was it something you knew from start?
It's interesting when people ask me, you ask a lot of writers, how did you get your start? And I chuckle because I was actually in like the third grade and I was homesick, nagging my dad because I was bored. And he just out of the blue said, well, why don't you write a poem? I was like, why? He said, because then you'll stop nagging me. So I started writing poetry when I was in the third grade. I still have those beginner poems, but then I kind of lost track of that creative side of me, other than through journaling and diaries. And it wasn't until actually I didn't get serious about it again until the older two had graduated, the younger two were in high school. And I just had this desire that God gave me to write. And I just had thought I was writing a Bible study. And then that Bible study got longer and longer and longer. And I thought, well, maybe I'm writing a book. So I actually didn't quite finish it, but I put it on the shelf. And it was almost like God was saying, are you going to trust me? Are you going to write just because I asked you to write? Or are you going to write to get your name out there? And I thought, God, I'm going to write because you've asked me to write. So I started really getting serious about 2010, 2012. And I was writing stories that primarily had people of color. And at that point in time, I was actually told, and this is really sad, that they didn't know where to market it. So I thought, God, this isn't right. So I stepped back and I said, teach me the industry. That's all I want, God. Teach me the industry. So for over 5 years, I didn't pitch a book. I didn't do anything. I learned the industry. But I was writing on my own, just not pitching the material. And God opened doors he just used me as his vessel. I started as a managing editor. I had no idea what that meant. But what I found out was I could recruit and encourage and actually publish people of color. So I started with one publishing house. Then I ended up going to another publishing house. And now I'm with the third. And I went, God, I'm not sure what you're doing, but you're moving me around. But in that time, I saw under Harambe Press, which was the imprint that I owned, saw 6 people of color published. I have had the opportunity to see other people of color just rise in the industry or get the books published or connect them with agents and editors. But it got to the point, where I was saying, God, when is it my turn? Because I've got this book I've written. When is it my turn? And people knew about the book and they would ask me, so you're going to publish it? And my response would always be, not until God says yes. And I got to the point I was afraid he'd say yes, and then I was afraid he would say no. but I just stayed back. And then last year, as I was speaking to a friend who opened a publishing house, and here's the ironic thing. I helped her get into the business and get her book published, and then she started a publishing house. So we were talking, and for the first time I had this piece of it's time. So when I asked her, would you be interested in publishing something I've written? She jumped on it. I think within 2 days I had a contract offer. And it's been wonderful working with her. And I've described it as I've been on one side of the river and I totally know that side, but now I've crossed to the other side and I'm learning. So all these organizations that I've been a part of, my heart was to promote writers of color, but not just to be writers, but to be in the industry as editors and agents in the marketing department, because we need to be in more places. It's one thing to walk in and, be published, be an published author, which is great. But can you imagine what it would be like to step into a publishing house and the person who's editing your work is a person of color? The person who is championing your writing is a person of color. The person who's in charge, the CEO of the company, is a person of color. And that's my heartbeat, is to see that happen. So that's how I kind of got into it. I guess you can see my passion.
Okay.
That's how I got into publishing, because it was like God wanted me to step back and learn the industry. And it was hard going to conferences and people would say, so are you pitching anything? And I go, no. Oh, okay. You come to a writer's conference and you're not pitching anything? No, I'm learning the business.
Yeah. Before I continue, your friend that you're talking about, I actually know who you're talking about.
I bet you do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Catherine, right?
It's Catherine.
Yeah. Yeah, no, she's amazing, you know. I had the honor of also having her on the show last year. She is definitely amazing. Yeah, that's all I can say. So you've chosen someone great, you know, to handle that for you. But it's crazy how that works, right? You know, how the tables can turn. You know, you help one person, sooner down the road they help you, and you know, just building these awesome legacies together. But wow, you know, what you have done is so special, you know. And how many people around the world, they don't jump on that calling that they get, you know? It's a selfless calling, because when you get that calling, you know, it's bigger than your own agenda, as it was for you. You know, your plan was this small, God's plan was bigger, right? And we don't jump on it. And it's a selfless act, because you now need to get out there into the industry, learn the industry, so you can empower other people to get their work and their craft out there. It's like how we started the conversation, you know, being on both ends, writing and the business side, is not for everyone. You know, unfortunately, it is not for everyone. You have to have that calling. And you went for it, and just wow. So, how long ago was this?
Oh, everything exploded in 2018. I was asked to be managing editor in 2018. And so I worked with 3 different companies, but then I was started teaching at conferences around the same time. I was actually 4 years earlier, I was asked to speak at a conference on the importance of people of color in writing. And I went to this conference. I was so excited because the conference director had asked me to come. I knew nothing about this conference other than it was a big deal. And I went and I was excited. I sat in the room. I had all these notes and I waited and I waited. And the only person who had stepped into the room was asking me how to find another workshop. So for the entire hour and 20 minutes, no one came. And this was a conference of about 500 people. And so
Wow.
I met the director in the hall. Of course, I was a little sad there. Well, need more to know how it went. And I said, no one came. And he looked me in the eyes and he said, Edwina, one day people are going to want to hear what you have to say. And that encouraged me so much that when I would go to other conferences, I might have one or two people there. I was okay with that because I thought, God, I'm just being faithful to what you've called me to. And I had told him a long time ago, if you ever ask me to speak, Lord, I will speak. My hands are open. So that started everything moving quickly. Here we are in 2016. Hopefully not. Here we are in 2026. And I average teaching and speaking at about 10 conferences a year. I keynote at conferences, and one of the largest Christian writers conferences in the U.S. is called the Blue Ridge Mountain Christian Writers Conference. I'm co-director. And so that's why I said God just took off with it. But at the same time, you have this, I'm going to say belief here, that if you're involved in that many organizations, then where are your books? How many books have you published? And when people would say to me, so where are your books? I said, I don't have one yet. What do you mean you don't have one yet? I have it, but God hasn't given me permission to publish it. And I think in one way, God is using that because so many people write and then run straight to publishing. And he may say, wait, how many actually ask, God, it's done. Do I need to wait? And that's where I was. God, it's done. And it was 98% done since 2016. And last year, the last little piece of it came together, but I still knew I was to wait until I spoke with Catherine. Now, here's what's interesting how Catherine and I met. I was teaching at the conference. She came into the room, wanted to pitch a story to me because I was also a managing editor. And as she sat across from me and she gave me her work, I could tell it was the work of a new writer. But I also could tell she had talent and she could tell a story. And that's how we connected. And I championed her every opportunity I had. I would talk to other directors. Hey, have you invited, Catherine to be a part of your team, the faculty? And that's what I like to do. I like to open those doors. So a lot has happened in what I call a few years. 2 years ago, I had another friend. I was at another conference. You think I live at conferences. But he asked me if I could speak to any audience, who would it be? And without missing a beat, I said those in authority. The CEOs, the marketing experts, the acquisition editors, the publishing houses. And he went, really? I said, yes, because they're the gatekeepers. 2 months later, I am talking with someone who's in charge of the one of the largest organizations here for Christian publishers. And as I shared my heart with him, a month later, maybe 6 weeks later, he invited me to the leadership conference. I had no idea what I was walking into, but I realized I was meeting all these CEOs and I thought, God, I didn't think you were going to bring it around this fast. And within a year of being involved with ECPA, I was teaching. I was teaching to those in marketing. And I was trying to show them they wanted to know how to catch a fish. And I was teaching them how to bring in fishermen, bring in those people of color, bring them alongside of you, train them with you. I'm not going to tell you just where to market the book that you have with somebody you have in your industry, but why not bring in other people of color? And I felt like her fault because afterward, I had gotten so many questions that were like, well, aren't you going to tell us where we can sell the books that we have? No. Well, isn't that why you're teaching a marketing class? Not what I was thinking, because I didn't have any directions other than you're teaching marketing. So I went out in the hall, and one of the directors of the conference was there, and I said, I need a hug. And I hugged her. She's like, what's wrong? I totally flopped. I didn't give them what they were looking for. So then we have a Zoom conference later, and I'm all ready to apologize to the CEO. I'm so sorry. It wasn't what you wanted. And before I could open my mouth, he said, I have heard more good comments about your workshop than anybody else's.
Wow.
So it's things like that that happen where I think, oh, I've messed this up. And God goes, no, you haven't. Even this past year at the conference, I reversed workshops by accident. So I went into a workshop thinking I was teaching this, and I'm supposed to be teaching this. And at the end, it was like 15, 20 people in there. Someone said, weren't you supposed to be teaching a workshop on this? And I was like, oh, why didn't you guys stop me? Why didn't somebody say something? And another person in the class went, you were so interesting with what you were teaching. I wasn't going to stop you. And I thought, oh. But come to find out, there was a lady in there who really felt like God was calling her to include people in the marginalized community in her writing. And she was like fighting it all the way until she was in that workshop. And for her, it was confirmation that she needed to do this. So,
Wow.
gave you more than what you were asking at that point.
Yeah. There's two things I can emphasize, for the listeners is you have done all of this with no book published. That's credibility with no book, which is a big wow again. The second thing, the importance of networking for creatives, any creator out there, author, musician, singer, producer, illustrator, the importance of going to a conference, a workshop, networking with whoever is there, and the fact that when it was 2 people or 2,000 people, you still gave your all. And you gave gratitude for those 2 people, which led you to bigger things in your career and your journey. And human nature, if someone, every human, right, out there gets 2 people at the event, they're all frustrated, they're disappointed, they're demotivated, they just want to give up. Which leads me to ask, in a world where people can get so demotivated so quick, can suffer so much with depression and anxiety over where they are at the moment in their career, what can you say? I know this is a bit off topic, but what can you say to them to hold on and have faith in God the way you did? Because it can be so difficult, right? At times.
Oh, yes, it can. I think I would say, who are you doing it for? Yourself or God? And if it's for God, then you have to trust that whoever is in front of you that you're going to be speaking to is the person or few people that need to hear the message you have. So if you're doing it for God, the audience doesn't matter. It still hurts. Like, when no one showed up to my workshop, it hurt. But I kept going with the idea of, God, you've given me something to say. You've put a passion on my heart. And I'm just going to keep going. The whole idea of, back in the early teens when I was told no one had a market for people of color, for their stories. And I thought, that can't be true. But I kept pushing for that. Excuse me. I kept pushing for the market needs to hear. They need to know. And the other thing that I would tell people when they get discouraged is you're not meant to do this alone. Where is your family? Where are those you're connecting with that you can say, I hated this, and they can be there with you. If you try to go on this journey, any creative journey by yourself, you're setting yourself up to fail because you're not meant to do it by yourself. And decide who you're doing it for. If it's for yourself, you're going to be greatly disappointed. If you can keep your eyes focused on God and trust that He's going to give you the audience, then it's not quite as painful, but it'll help motivate you to keep going.
Thanks. So just one more question on that. And when I ask these questions, because what I've gathered, from creators, from podcasts, for me to go and tell my family that I want to be a writer or I want to be a singer, I want to be a music producer, it's very hard from the generation they have come from to take that serious. So I'm a creator and this is what I want to do. I know I'm good at it. This is, what God is calling me to do. And I believe in myself. But my family, my friends, they don't. And now I've got no one. All I got is God, which is enough, right? Still enough. And me. So what would you say in that situation? Because not everybody has someone. So
Yeah,
it's a reality. It is.
it is a reality. And I love your honesty about that because family can be hard. You have you and God, but I use the term sometimes I need God with skin on. I need that person with me. And for another career I was in, my dad was not happy at all. I was a missionary. And I had an opportunity to work in a pretty prestigious job, but I knew I was going to be a missionary. And then my boss went to my dad and told him what I was making. I was like, you got some guts. And she said, well, what are you going to do about it? And he said, if God has called my daughter, I'm not going to stop her. Now, up to that point, I had nothing positive. So when you've got, I guess what I would say, right now you have the net and the internet, and it's not the best because you want somebody with skin on. But that just may be where God has you right now. And just remember your calling and your passion, and you try to speak with your family as much as you can. But if they are sucking that out of you, then you may need to just, again, keep praying. God doesn't have you in this by yourself. And so the things that encourage you, you're a musician. What songs are you listening to that are uplifting you? Don't pretend to God that it's not uncomfortable. I yell at him all the time. Have a freedom to just be you, because he didn't create you. He didn't call you to this, to be by yourself. It could be a season. And we don't like those desert experiences. But I'm going to encourage you just to keep going. And God can give you creative ways to not be alone.
Yeah. So, what I love to say on the show, or it's one of my mantras, is life is happening for you, not to you. So if you're in a situation and you feel like I'm a victim and you're asking, why God, why me? You need to look at the blessings in disguise because there's a reason, like you use the word season. It's true. You're in a season and God is taking you through the season so you can learn something from it, because you may have prayed to God to say, God, look, I want to be an award-winning New York Times best-selling author. God, that's what I want to be. So God is not going to be like, yeah, sure, Kino, no problem. Tomorrow when you wake up, you are going to be a best-selling author, New York Times best-selling author. It doesn't work that way. I'm sure we would want it to, but it doesn't work that way. And God needs to take you through different levels in order to make you an award-winning author, right?
Right.
Because you need to learn, how to get there. It's not just gonna be like, yeah, sure. And that's the reality of like that's the hardcore truth, I can end this off with. So just have faith, have faith. It's happening for you, not to you. So
That
Edwin, can you define for us what is Christian fiction?
it's it doesn't cover up the pain. I mean, characters are just like us, but it can tell it in a clean way, meaning you don't have to use the profanity. You don't have to have sexual content, but you can have hurt, rage, anger, happiness, joy, because it's a part of reality. It's the whole idea of Christian fiction. You want to write it in such a way that non-believers are drawn into your story. Christian fiction is not Bible bashing. And, every time you turn the page, someone is telling you to repent or whatever. But it's bringing you into prayerfully situations that can give you hope, that can ask you to look deeper, ask for more. And so when it comes to Christian fiction, that's more the idea, is you're looking for a good read. Because just because you write fiction doesn't mean it's good. Just because you call it Christian doesn't mean it's good. You have to learn to be a writer. And the idea is you can get your message across without using a lot of terminology or examples from the world.
Why? So, why wouldn't it be nonfiction? Out of curiosity,
Why would say it again?
why wouldn't like that book I'm writing, that story of that pain that I probably went through if I'm writing that, even though I'm developing characters around it, why wouldn't it be nonfiction? Why do we label it fiction?
If it's your story, and it can be either autobiography or creative nonfiction. Like you have a skeleton of things that happen, but you may not know word for word what happened. So you take what you know and then you add to it to create that story. Like, for instance, you could say, my brother kicked me when I was 7, and that hurt my feelings. Okay, that's fact. God, bring in the senses. What were you feeling? What were you smelling? What were you seeing? What were you doing? And you put all of that with, my brother kicked me when I was 7. And that's when, as you're telling your story, it can be creative nonfiction because you bring in that creative side of your writing. Every nonfiction writer needs to understand the fiction techniques in order for their book to not sound like a textbook. Again, you want to bring in your audience. You want to start with, you have to know who your audience is. That's the first thing I'll say. Who is your audience? And I always say, speak to an audience of one. What that means is if you can imagine yourself on one side of the table and there's a person on the other side of the table, what do they need from you as a nonfiction writer? And it's very easy to say, well, I'm going to tell them, nope, that's different. What do they need? So that requires prayer. God, what does the person on the other side of the table need from me? Not what I want to tell them. And so I call that an audience of one. It's It's interesting because when my family traveled to Africa many, many years ago, and we were in Johannesburg, and we had a layover, and then we were going to go to Kenya. So when we got to the airport, I noticed all of a sudden all the women at the counters just kind of leaned back and looked at each other. I thought, this is not good. And I said, what's wrong? Oh, the computers are down. Okay. And we had already done a 13-hour flight with 4 kids. And I said, so when are they going to come back up? Hour, 2 hours, could be tomorrow. I was like, oh no, my family's going to kill me. So then she looked at me and she said, are all those 4 kids yours? Yes. And you're married to him? Pointing at my husband. Yes. And they're all 4 hits? I thought, where are we going with this conversation? I said, yes. And she said, how? So I got to explain the gospel to her. And when I finished, now my 13-year-old was standing on this side of me. She'd never heard me share my faith. So I'm sharing my faith with this young lady. And guess what happened when I finished? Computers came up. So I'm handing her a gospel tract, and the person across the aisle jumped up and said, where's mine? And as we went through, I said to my daughter, do you now understand more of what your mom and dad do? And she said, oh yeah, I get it. Well, when I said audience of 1, the lady directly in front of me was my audience. It's like I put a flashlight on her. But God spread the beam. And the person over here, he brought into the light, and he showed my daughter what the light looks like. So when you are writing your story, think of the audience of 1, because whoever God wants to be a part of it, he'll bring them in. And your story was meant for somebody. You're not the only one who needs to hear your words. You have an audience.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now I know why you do so well at a conference. You are extremely engaging. I love that. Thank you for explaining, Christian fiction, so whoever's listening understands, what it is and what it entails. As you said, it's not like you flip in the page and someone is saying, it's time to repent. It's not a Bible study.
Right.
So because people can get confused, oh, here's a Christian fiction author, it's probably about the Bible, and it's not the case. It's not the case for listeners. Thank you. And you used a great example, so thanks for that. That was a laugh out loud moment. That's what it was. So before we touch, on your upcoming book, you a sensitivity consultant. Please tell me what that is.
Oh, it's so funny because a lot of people are like, sensitivity? The whole idea is when you're writing about a community outside of your own, then you need someone from that community to review your work. And as a sensitivity reader, the whole idea is I want your writing to be authentic, and I want you to be sensitive to another culture. And so a lot of times, especially books about people of color, now I have to tell everyone, I don't know everything about people of color. That's not going to work. But I do have enough of an understanding to know when you're doing the tropes and the cliches, and I will just point those out. And it's not editing, because an editor, reads for the minutia of everything. This reads for how you're going to impact the community. And I have a lot of people who come to me for that. I also have people that I reached out to and said, if I had someone looking for this, can I reach out to you? And I've had that happen. Catherine's been a sensitivity reader under me. Because I want writers, the idea is they've got words that need to get out. And if they just make that one mistake about a community that's not accurate, then it's not only hurting that one person, but it's hurting their entire community. And guess what? They're going to tell their friends not to read your book. So it's worth it to go through all of this before. And you've got the internet. That's great. But if you can find a person in that community, that's what you really want. So that's what a sensitivity reader does, is to make sure your writing is authentic about that community. And it's not just about color. It can be about disabilities. It can be mental issues. So that's the whole idea. When people hear it, they're thinking, oh, it's a black and white issue. Oh, no, that's just the tip of the iceberg. In my upcoming book, I have a young man with spina bifida, and I had to research that. I have a young lady, one of the children, she has Down syndrome. I had to research that. But also, this is where you become a people watcher. You look for characters in your story and you watch them. So I work with this organization at church. It's called a food pantry. And a lot of times this parent comes in with her daughter who has Down syndrome. And she's about the age of the girl that I've written about in my story. And so I watch her and I try to interact with her. It's giving me what I need to write. So don't totally rely on Google. Google is not your God. That's what I tell people. But it's a great place to start. So that's what a sensitivity reader does. If you're writing about an area that is not a part of your community, whether it's skin, disabilities, anything, you need a sensitivity reader.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Makes sense. Makes sense. It's the first time I ever heard about it, but I'm sure there's authors who do practice it out there. They just don't mention it. But I can see how critically important it is for the process. Because you don't want to offend anybody, or you don't want to give misinformation about anxiety, for example.
Yes.
You don't want to do that. You're going to lose listeners. You're going to lose credibility. So you don't want that.
Correct.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you. So since you mentioned, your upcoming book, you can continue without giving too much away, but you can give us, a brief explanation about what can we expect this much.
You're going to expect a book that you cannot stop turning the pages. It is the story of a widow who is moving from Colorado to small town North Carolina. And her children, she has 3 children, are biracial. So she learns, she faces real racism on several levels, not just the color of her children, but her daughter has Down syndrome. So the book is about grief, how to start overcoming that, because she lost her husband just before they moved. And it's because of the loss of him, she moves to a small town into his childhood home. And her father-in-law has not liked her for 19 years. So it's reconciliation. You're dealing with grief. You're dealing with belonging, because one of the sons has more of a darker complexion, but he has his father's green eyes. The other son has a very fair complexion. And when they move into this small town, it's the middle child who's of a lighter complexion, who is trying to fit in with his white friends because he looks it. And he's trying to distance himself from his brother. So you've got the tension of that in the family. You've got the tension of the small town. But you see the people who do rally around her. And Ebony's problem is she doesn't trust anyone. She just keeps pushing people away until the end. And she sees the need. And you see it sprinkled throughout where she'll get that close to really trusting someone, but she won't totally give herself to it. So there's funny spots, there's very serious, and the husband who died, you get to know him through flashbacks. And then you get to understand her pain.
Wow. This is definitely serious. I mean, if you are observant of the world around you, this is like an average day, or also like an average day for someone who's trying to navigate their way through that. And your book now can be the cure for that person out there reading it to navigate their way through it. So the name of the book is The Colors of Home.
Correct.
That's correct. Perfect. I noticed on the cover, you got destiny and you got unity. Is there a specific reason why you got those two words on the cover on the vehicle itself?
Okay. Destiny is the little girl's name. And it actually is also a play on words because destiny is where they ended up in this small town called home. And the question is it really going to be home or is it not? But that's where they're headed. So that's their destiny. And the whole idea of unity is can a community come together when everybody doesn't look like them? And so can they be unified? And the title itself came, I knew the title was going to have home in it because I created this small town called Home. And here's where research comes in. In North Carolina, there's a small town called Welcome. And so I put this invented town called Home on the other side of Welcome. Welcome home. And that even is a play on words because she doesn't feel welcome. The family doesn't feel welcome. But that's why that's on the cover. And that is part of what's taking place.
Yeah. For the listeners, what to expect. If you miss this, destiny is on the number plate. If you miss that, this is the Da Vinci Code, Look for the hidden messages.
Yes, there are inner messages. Oh, and that's what I was ready to tell you. The title kind of jumped out at me because I knew the word home was going to be in the title. And I came up with these welcome home and all these things. I'm like, I don't want anything cliche. And as I'm reading through it and I'm seeing how color, not just in skin, but everything that's going around in the story, I knew it was going to be the colors of home. And the colors play a huge part in the end of the book because Ebony, she's an art major, so I'll leave it at that. But the colors play a huge role in the end.
Oh, we shall patiently wait for this to be released. Is there a date in March that you set for the release?
March 31st.
March 31st, so at the end of March. Now having a party.
Yes. So excited.
I can imagine, being in the business for so long and here comes your first book. I mean, wow. Like this is going to be so huge for you. And I'm sure once this book is out, you are going to be dropping more, like close by.
I already have the second one.
See, there we go.
See?
There we go. Yeah, okay, cool. Thank you so much for that. Before we end now, I just got to ask, two questions. Like you started off in 2018. It's 2026 now. The industry has changed when it comes to branding, marketing, exposure, whichever word label you want to use it. It's much more easier these days to release a book to be self-published than it was even in 2018, even though you could, but it wasn't so mainstream as it is now. So a lot has changed, but then so you don't have so many red flags. You can now work for hire, get an editor. If you want to get an external publisher, you still can, and still do all the groundwork yourself. Marketing has changed a lot. And that can be a challenge for authors in this day and age, even though there's not so much red tape. So, how have you navigated all of this change, this technological era that we're living in?
You gotta, you have to do your homework. You have to study what's new. I mean, publishing changes is so fluid. It changes almost overnight. So when you're looking at marketing, this is where research really comes in handy. You can even say what on Google, what are some marketing tips I can use? And so that's where the homework part comes in. I tell a lot of writers 25% of your time should be spent writing. 75% of your time should be spent learning the market and learning the industry so that you're not going in blind. Because the other thing, it's important to realize God does call people to self-publish or hybrid publish and traditionally publish. Ask him what he wants you to do. And again, that's the hard part is are you keeping your hands open to God or are you on your own time on it? But you have to study the industry. That's what I would say. I've seen it do this. And who knows what it's going to be like after my book comes out. But I do know not to get rigid about it because it can get discouraged. So I could tell you something now about marketing, and in a month from now, that's going to be a dinosaur. So that's why if you want to stay on top of it, you have to do your homework and research and ask questions. If you're around anybody who's in the industry, you ask as many questions as they'll let you. Because one of the things that I know with the people I'm around is we want you to succeed. And so when people come to like the Christian conferences where I teach, we tell them we want you to succeed. We're not in competition. We will even direct you to somebody else if we don't feel like you fit with where we are. And that shows the unity there that we have. And I don't know if you're going to ask me, but I'm going to tell you anyway. The title of the imprint, Harambe Press, Harambe is Swahili. And it can mean a coming together, but the definition I love, it's a pulling together. Pulling together takes work. And unless we all pull together, in not only the publishing industry, but in the creative side of life, we'll never represent totally what God wants us to represent.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. And the second question I had, before we end off is, you came into the industry to give opportunities to people of color so they can get their work published. If Edwina wasn't in the industry at the moment, is that still an issue people of color are still facing in 2026?
Yes, it is a continual fight. And that's where I have said, God, I can't do this alone. And he is raising people up. But I think it will be continual, I hate to say this, until the rapture. Just because of, you have to look at who's in charge and who are the CEOs. And it's still an issue. But I am one who's been beating a drum and will beat it louder if I can for that to happen.
Yeah. I mean, the more you do what you do, and the more all the authors in your community and network, they continue to do what they do, just grows and grows and grows, because as I said, before, there's not so much red tape anymore. So if you're a person of color and you're still struggling, and this is not only labeled to the States or South Africa, I mean, this is global, right? We're talking global here. It's a global issue. So I had the same feelings and opinions as you. Hence why I brought up the question, because I still see it as an issue. But I mean, there's less red tape. And if you're listening right now, you need to start building that network of like-minded people. You need to listen to podcasts such as this. You need to go online, check who Edwina is, try your best to get into her circle, go to her conference, you know, read her book, whatever she is doing at the moment, get involved in it some way, somehow, and find like-minded people because they're out there, you know. Everyone's struggle needs to become one together, unified, and start building together. And I don't know if you get this in the States, but there's one shortfall when it comes to people of color in South Africa is we don't know how to leave our ego at the door, and we struggle to be selfless. That is one struggle. And my message to creators in South Africa or Africa as a whole, or even the States, if this is happening, or wherever you're listening from, is you need to get rid of that mentality if you are going to succeed. That's my opinion. If years ago I never do this, well, I am telling you, Edwina and I will not be having this conversation right now. You know, so that there needs to stop. And we're still battling with that, and we're struggling with that in South Africa because of what happened in the past. You know, so 20 plus years later, after South Africa tasted democracy, it's still there. But we can't keep a balance with it, and it's affecting our creative work. And that's there has been like a huge issue. Like if I go into the lower income communities of South Africa, and I have a lot of talented friends that stay in these areas, they have not made major progress, yet they have been in the game longer than I have. And that's concerning because they're refusing to change their way of thinking or leave the ego at the door. Or, as you said, ask the question, who am I doing this? So that day is concerning for me, and I can do the best I can, with the situation, but it's extremely, extremely hard, you know.
Yes. And you're right.
Yeah.
Leave the ego at the door. If they can answer the question, who are you doing this for? And are you willing to trust God with your journey? Those two, if they can do that, it means, rendering, it's humbling. And not a lot of us like to be humbled. But leave the ego at the door. Is this what God is calling you to do? And reach out. If you've got friends who've been in it longer than you are, you ask the question, are you still where you need to be? Or is it time to step out and see where else God's going to take you? If that's where he wants them, they need to stay put. But if it's not, leave the ego at the door and take that step.
Yeah. You mentioned a key word, we get so stuck in our comfort zones. We don't want to step out of it, and we don't want to hear what someone else is saying, or someone else wants to help us, right? But we don't want to because of that ego. It's stopping us, How many times I can recall I would see someone type something or post something, and I'll be like, let me redo this for you so it's more intriguing, it's more professional. People can actually take you serious with what you're advertising. And I will do it out of the goodness of my heart, and I'll send it to them on Messenger or WhatsApp, wherever. But they will never use it. They will never, because I, like he's giving someone kindness so wrong. But goes back to the way of thinking, because how it used to be was if somebody did something for you, they would have wanted something in return down the line, right? That's how it was, but now it's changed. Now we can be kind. I can assist you with something. Doesn't mean I want something in return. I'm doing it so you can live your best life as a creator,
Yeah.
We're still fighting those battles in 2026, and what can I say?
We
we
just
go.
can't stop. We keep going.
Yeah.
We can't stop. Today here is Martin Luther King's Day. And when, one of his famous speeches starts out with, I have a dream. Now, a lot of those things he dreamed, he didn't get to see, happen. But there are a lot of things that he dreamed up that are happening today. And so as we step out, we may not see the outcome of what we're doing. You may not see anyone ever say thank you for what you're doing, but you just need to keep doing what God's called you to do. And you don't know the impact you're having. And that's if we can get past who we are and just trust God. Who are the people you're impacting? And I may never know who they are, but use me. Bottom line, use me.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Edwina, for your positivity, your optimism, and all you're doing, not only for the creator economy, but for everyone around the world. Being a creator comes with responsibility to empower the entire globe, to create work and art that empowers and benefits humanity at the end of the day. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And I wish you all the best. If we don't chat before March, I wish you all the best with the launch and, wish you nothing but success in the future.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. One more thing before you go, where would you want listeners to find you online?
I have a web, edwinaperkins.com. And if you go there, you can message me there. I'll get it. I have some just ways to incorporate marginalized communities in your writing. I also have there, right now what I'm doing is Ebony, who's the main character in my book. She's doing my blogs right now. So you get to know her. You get, she tells you about this journey she's on. And these are things that are not in the book. She talks about things in the book, but it's not being quoted. And you get to learn who she is. So that's mainly what I'm doing right now. But yes, please visit my website.
Perfect. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day. And have an awesome week.
Oh,
yeah, it's been a pleasure.
It's been an honor being with you today. I am excited about what you're doing. And don't stop. That's what I'll say. Don't stop.
Yeah, thank you. That actually means a lot to me because at times, we need to hear that from other people as well to, get us going again and again and again. Sometimes self-motivation is not enough.
Exactly.
Yeah. But thank you so much and enjoy the week to come.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Bye.